Good morning and very welcome to all of you and to my panel members as well. So this week, I can tell you, has been very, very painful for me. The minute I found out that I had to chair the session, I realized that I had an opportunity that many people are probably envying me for. I have 4 venture capitalists with billions of dollars between them at my disposal for multiple phone calls and 40 minutes on stage. So I've been thinking of how to pitch an idea to them because I've got a captive audience here. Unfortunately, as life has it, I have nothing. So we will spend the next 40 minutes talking about a topic that's very, very interesting. Can India build the next Silicon Valley? So in the interest of making this session very good for the audience as well as for the panel members, I urge you to hold your questions. I will have enough time for Q&A at the end. So without much ado, let's get started. This is a topic that simultaneously evokes a certain sense of uplifting pride as well as self-reflective skepticism. Can India create the next Silicon Valley? But if you go back even 5 years, one could argue that this question would be considered audacious at best. People would have not even thought that it was possible, but it's a testament to how far our ecosystem has evolved that today, this is a very natural question to be asking. So one of the PayPal mafia founders, which is Reid Hoffman, very famous in the recent past for making an obscene amount of money in the LinkedIn-Microsoft deal, famously said that Silicon Valley is a mindset, not a location. And Vinod Khosla has also said something similar. So I'd like to start off by going down. Alok, we can start with you, and then the rest of the panel members as well. I'd like you to look at the concept of Silicon Valley and what it means to you.
So first of all, my name is Alok, and I'm part of a VC fund called SAIF Partners, which is something that invests in early stage to late stage tech-based ventures. And before that, I was CEO of a company called FreeCharge and CEO of a company called Redbus, both of them startups. And before that, I've spent time at Google, Adobe, and Accel, all of them being corporate MNC kind of the companies. In my view, I think world is increasingly becoming flat, increasingly becoming scalable by way of deploying technology. So even though there are all of these political boundaries out there, but they don't matter anymore. You create content anywhere, it gets consumed anywhere. You create services anywhere, it gets consumed anywhere. Commerce is having no boundaries. There are a lot of products coming out whereby you buy things directly from China or various other countries. So increasingly what is becoming more and more important is that in the classic economics courses, we learn this concept of core competence. And every country, every locality has to figure out their core competence. And I think Silicon Valley has figured out the core competence of disruption. Disruption is their core competence. So build something, then disrupt it in a different way, do something and do something new in a different way is what they have built as a core competence. And in many of the other countries where entrepreneurship has become successful, it is becoming quite clear that there was some kind of a basic necessity which created expertise in that country, and that became the core competence of that country. Israel is a very good example where they have been living in the threat wartime for several decades, and that gave them the rise to build a lot of expertise in security, algorithms, a lot of these kind of things. And because of cross-pollination between industry and military, now that country is evolving very, very rapidly in these kind of technologies, and that has become their core competence. If you look at China, they build their core competence in the area of manufacturing with a lot of people, cheap labor being the base, and they kept improving Kaizen-like approach, and manufacturing became their core competence, and soon they started isolating themselves with a Great Wall of China, a Great Firewall of China, and they started copying things initially, but now they're actually showing the world the innovation in the mobile space with WeChat figuring out the right kind of commerce model. So to me, Silicon Valley is a core competence of disruption, and every country, every area can figure out their own core competence. It may be disruption for US Silicon Valley, it may be security for Israel, it may be copycat for China, and for India it has to be something else.
So Shekhar, maybe you could quickly introduce yourself and also talk about the same thing. What does the concept of Silicon Valley mean to you?
So this is Shekhar Kirani. I think I've come to many Confluence events. I see quite a lot of familiar faces. If you have seen me before, I would say hi. I'm part of Accel Partners. We manage around $500 million investing predominantly in India. We've done around 100 odd investments. My personal background is I was part of 2 startups in the Valley, almost 18 years. Then part of the MNC journey, I used to head VeriSign in India. At that time, as an engineer, went all the way, managing the center. Then on the other side of the table of entrepreneurs now, in the last 6-7 years, as a partner at Accel. So that's my background. So what's Silicon Valley? I think you said about the mindset. I think people miss that extraordinary mindset. Every few years, you see a bunch of new people come up with a 10x idea and take on biggies. And they disrupt not only the business model and the companies, and if the biggies don't adopt, they literally crush them, right? And these small companies starts becoming big. And the next set of guys come, and again they crush these companies which have gone big. So this cycle in the process produces extraordinary technology, builds an awesome confidence, and a set of products that affects every human being in the worldwide, right? So that is, for me, is what I see as the Silicon Valley.
Excellent. Thank you. Sharad, something similar?
Yeah.
Or something different from Shekhar's view?
So my name is Sharad. I'm probably the only non-VC here. I haven't taken the plunge to be a VC. I'm an angel investor. I've been an entrepreneur before. I used to be part of the Lucent AT&T family. Eventually left that to set up a wireless infrastructure startup, which is now part of Cisco. And I've been a fairly active ecosystem builder. Shekhar is also part of the journey, and many of you are involved in that. So, so coming back to Silicon Valley, I think it is this whole disruptive mindset. Some of us call it the panga mindset. Instead of doing dhanda, you are, in addition to that, also taking a panga. And this is a new idea for India. India was all about dhanda businesses. India has a very strong history of entrepreneurship, and the entrepreneurship culture is a dhanda culture. And then, came this new wave of startups even in India, or certainly Silicon Valley thrives in this kind of thinking, which is, I must disrupt. I must take on a Goliath and bring that down. And that, I think, is a big idea. The other big idea that Silicon Valley represents, which I think is taken root here in India, is that for every problem, technology is the solution. If you actually set this in India, that India's financial inclusion, health inclusion, agriculture, productivity, or for that matter, education, technology will solve India's hard problems in these areas. 5 years back, 7 years back, this was heresy. But I think today it is not. And we must we say our thanks to Silicon Valley, because they introduced this idea to the rest of the world.
Excellent. Thank you. And how about you, Girish?
Hi, Girish Paranjpe. I am part of Xfinity Venture Partners, venture firm which invests in core tech startups. In my past life, I used to be co-CEO of Wipro. My view on Silicon Valley is basically it needs lots of geeks and rich dudes. And I think Bangalore has, and India has a lot of them, at least geeks certainly, rich dudes getting there. But combination of that will eventually lead to something like Silicon Valley in India as well. And I think what has happened over time is that because we have built a talent pool in India, thanks to the captives here as well as the IT industry, we today have a bunch of youngsters and people who have deep technology capability, have faced international clients, managers, competitors, and know how to use technology, have a can-do attitude, saying that they can face the world. And I think that is all the ingredients to make a Silicon Valley in India.
Excellent. So, excellent points. And, so as a geek, I'll direct it to one of the geeky rich dudes here. I have one big theme that I see emerging from this discussion, especially with what you said, Alok, as well as you, Shekhar, is that Silicon Valley thrives on its ability to absorb disruption as well as being fundamentally okay with risk. So the question for you, Shekhar, if you can just address this point is, are there certain aspects that are endemic to Indian culture that insulate us from such a mindset in terms of, we are a very risk-averse culture, have traditionally been, and similarly, disruptive influences have not been as prevalent here as Silicon Valley has shown us in the West. So what are your views on some of the, can you give us some examples of what you mean by how Silicon Valley has absorbed these disruptions?
It is, if you look at the constituent elements between what we have here and what exists in Silicon Valley, there's not much of a difference. In my mind, is there enough talent pool of high quality we understand? The answer is yes. Do we have, we used to complain about product management and UX, but I think in the last few years, we're starting to see extraordinary things about able to think about the product and build it in the country. Do we have infra, in terms of the office buildings and internet connectivity and PCs and laptops? I think we have a far superior office than the Valley offices, according to me. We have built an extraordinary MNC with exceptional lunch, dinner, breakfast, bus service. None of it exists there. Right? And then we also have, to some extent, budgets. I think when I was at VeriSign, I used to have lots of budgets. Budgets are not the challenge anymore in the country too.
I don't know if everybody would agree to that, but
I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it. So the challenge I see is, I don't see the input side is all elements are somewhat there. What we see is we tend not to set the agenda. We are always following someone else's agenda. And if you're not at the table to set the agenda, and that's where most of the time has to go in India, leadership thinking about who is setting my agenda. And lack of setting that agenda, somebody sets it up, we spend 3 years, 4 years doing some incremental work, we are very happy, my salaries are going 15, 20% year on year, things are looking good, everything is fine, and we're moving from one MNC to the other MNCs. But we'll spend a lifetime. And this generation will pass on, the next generation may have to do it. But there is an opportunity for this generation to attack not only India problems, I feel it global problems. There are examples starting to happen if we know what questions to ask, not the answers. That's where we're making a mistake.
Sure. So Girish, maybe you can, through your rich experience in corporate India as well, are there elements of this DNA that Shekhar is talking about? Is there a role for people in this audience who predominantly belong to corporate India, working for MNCs in India, to inculcate some of this disruptive DNA, this absorption of risk, etc., that kind of mindset? Is there a way that they can inculcate this?
For all the years that I spent in the IT industry, there used to be always people I regretted leaving the company. And there used to be people who used to be uncomfortable in the corporate setup. Who loved the money, who loved the environment, who loved working with clients, but wanted freedom to do what they wanted to do. And I think some of those people, whether they are in the audience today or not, are the ones who have created companies. So the very fact that when you have a pool of talented people who have got confidence, who have understood technology, and some of them are not comfortable with the straight jacket, will move out and want to do something different. And they are willing to take the risk, and they are willing to play the game. And those are the entrepreneurs who are in the game today.
Excellent. All right. So Sharad, I'd like to ask you about something else that's very pertinent in this whole scenario. We've seen a lot of startups here. We've seen a lot of attempts. It's not for lack of trying. I mean, I think the intent and the kind of passion that exists here is clearly something that nobody can debate. But when it comes to the question of local context, we've seen several examples of companies that use tried and tested methods from the West, what gave them success there, and trying to replicate some of that here, and that hasn't necessarily led to the right outcomes. So maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the examples where it was done wrong, where it was done right, where companies tried to replicate some of the Silicon Valley model here, and what your thoughts are on what actually they should be focusing on to make it work.
We've gone through a phase of copy-paste entrepreneurship. And part of the reason is my VC friends sitting on either side, because all of them have LPs who are foreign LPs, and so therefore when they have to go back and explain their investment to them, it's easiest to say this is so-and-so, this is XYZ of India, right? So it's easier to do that. So after I've taken my obligatory pot shot at Shekhar, I can now yeah, so this is just to fire him up. He usually wins this battle. But So we've gone through this phase of copy-paste entrepreneurship. But at the same time, I think there is real entrepreneurship in terms of innovation also starting to happen in India. The reason is, I think we have a global democratization of combinatorial innovation happening. And earlier, if you think of mashups, Web 2.0, which you could only do with websites, you can now do with complex systems. Everybody here, with very few exceptions, has Aadhaar. Aadhaar is a combinatorial innovation. Very little was actually built specifically for Aadhaar, but it was uniquely put together using open source pieces. And these pieces have multiplied. And whether the piece is built in the US or that building block is built here in India, it is available to an entrepreneur to use to build value on top of it. And Uber and Ola are some examples of that. So I think we are at this threshold because of this enabling condition of lots of building blocks available. Because of willingness to look at Indian problems, we will see a thriving of innovation which is not of the copy-paste type. Because real India is coming online on the smartphone. And that is a very, very large market to address. And to address that market, what works for a global middle-class person is not going to work here. Sure. So there is an opportunity like never before.
All right. I hope the entrepreneurs in the audience are taking notes because this is absolutely fascinating insight. Alok, maybe segueing from what Sharad was talking about, again, making it a little more relevant to the audience here, is there something that the MNCs here, the companies in India can add in terms of local context knowledge that would help further this cause of trying to build something like Silicon Valley here? How can they contribute?
I think in my view, there are a couple of ingredients for doing a disruptive work or building a great disruptive business. First and foremost of them is actually having a deep insight into the market. Knowing intricacy about market like nobody else does. How does the market behave? How do consumers behave? What is a deep problem? What is a large problem? The second one is actually having expertise to solve that problem, primarily in tech-driven way in today's ecosystem, where you apply latest bleeding edge technology to solve those large-scale problems and come up with good solutions. Third one is actually taking willingness to take risk and jump on that problem and put everything of your life at stake for solving that problem. And fourth one is having access to money in the ecosystem, because you can't do all of this just by your passion. You need money at the end of the day to achieve your dreams. I think in India, we didn't have many of these things till now. Particularly missing thing was the first thing which I talked about was the deep insight into the market. If you look at many of these MNCs in India, you take PayPal, you take Google, you take eBay, bunch of these companies are having guys who have got super deep insight into the market. They have got very deep insight how do the US market behave, how were those problems solved, how did those things evolve over a period of time, how India market is specifically different than the US market, what are the deep pain points, what things will work from US, what things will not work from US. And we didn't have that kind of a skill set 10 years back, or even probably 5, 6, 7 years back. But in today's time, that kind of skill set does exist. And that's a key ingredient to doing the disruption, because with the whole global thing, whatever is happening, India is getting a lot of attention in the global scheme of things. We are getting enough money here. Risk-taking is something that cannot be fixed. That is something up to the individuals to take. Technology, understanding how to solve problems with the technology and having this deep access to the market knowledge are the two things which actually these MNCs are incorporating very, very nicely into a lot of people out there. It's a matter of basically taking a belief into your skill set that you have learned and then jumping onto the entrepreneurship, because you really know how things work like nobody else does. You take things like logistics, you take things like finance, you take things like education. All of these companies cannot be disrupted, in my personal view, by a 22-year-old guy who is fresh out of IIT and just goes and builds a good front end. That's not the way problem will be solved, because there are so many deep underlying things happening that you won't even get to understand, and world just moves forward.
Excellent. And thank you, Alok, for that plug for PayPal. I appreciate it.
I just want to add a comment here. I think the bane of everything is not understanding the size of the market. You look at every startup today, people start with a passionate idea. They don't do the homework, they get started. I've seen the same thing within the MNCs. I used to be heading VeriSign here. We spent around $5-6 million trying to build a security business in India. I didn't do any of this work that I do as a VC today. At that time, I got somebody to commit, we spent money, nothing came out of it. So market size, what happens is we start with the wrong way. We look at what do we have in US or our product portfolio. Then we look at which I can sell in India. Then let me see, can I push that product incrementally, change it here and there and push it. That's a wrong way to think about. We have to start from the market. What's the big problems that exist in the market that is worth solving? For a $50 billion company, say you own PayPal, $50 billion, you come up with an idea, you solve, when you get a $20-30 million outcome, you don't even get a congratulations message, man. So it's not even significant, right? At a $50 billion. It has to be a $5 billion in 5 years. So the scale at which you are operating, we totally miss that. We are so engrossed in our own world, we look at the idea, oh, why can't we sell it? We go and try to sell it, we make some money, no commitment over a long period of time. So we don't see the market and we don't tackle the big markets. Starting from the market, I think we can do a far superior job taking those markets and hitting out of the park versus starting what I have and try to sell.
Excellent. Thank you, Shekhar. That was an excellent insight. So one of the things that you probably caught at the beginning is when the gentlemen were introducing themselves, they were extremely humble in describing their backgrounds. What I'll tell you is that all of them actually came from extremely senior leadership roles in various big companies in their past. So that leads me to another interesting topic, because other than just the ability to absorb disruption, the ability to take risks, it can be argued that Silicon Valley also distinguishes itself in having deep expertise and leadership. So Girish, having led one of the most respected companies in India, how would you, and now in the last 2 years, as we were talking, you've invested in 10 startups in the last 24 months. How would you compare and contrast the availability of expertise and leadership in India, in the startup ecosystem?
I would say on the technical leadership side, very strong. I mean, if I look at the people I meet as entrepreneurs today versus the kind of people I met both overseas in India in the technical field, I would say very strong technical leadership. And like in any technical-led ecosystem, people have better understanding of technology than of markets, and that's what we heard. So tendency is to start product first and then get to go to market and then figure out whether it's going to sell or not. The good news for them is that it's not a lost game, because 2 reasons. One is people adapt. So people who are really good and who are passionate will adapt. So it's not as if you started as a geek, you live only as a geek. You will become a business person at some point if you really have passion and adaptability. The other thing is the India market, because that's where most of them try their first time. India market is welcoming of innovation. So many markets that I've seen are very risk averse. So unless you come from a very established company, you will not get audience. A new company will not get audience at all. Whereas in India, that is not so. You go to a big bank, you go to a big telecom company, you go to a big retail chain, you have a terrific idea. With some network, you will be able to get an audience. So people will listen to you. They may not pay you. That's a different point. But at least you will get a chance to present your idea and try your idea out. So it's a great market for you to try your product. It may not necessarily be a great idea to commercialize it, but those are the things which I think give me confidence that something good will come out of this.
Sure. And Shekhar, if I were to look at the availability of leadership bench strength in the MNC companies in India, I'd like to think that there is phenomenal bench strength here in India. So do you see, from your experiences in the past, having been on the other side and now evaluating various startups for investment opportunities, do you see a way for people in this room, for example, to contribute some of this leadership bench strength, this philosophy, etc., to the startup ecosystem in India?
If I take a philosophical approach, I wish all MNCs die.
All right.
Because the best of the best has been sucked out of the ecosystem. They are stuck. They are well paid. They are institutionalized. Now they are getting between 50, 80, 100, 200K salaries, everything set. They can't come down. It's a valley of death. You have to come down to come back. They see the other entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, who have no idea what they're doing, desperately with passion, going at it. But on the other side, extraordinary skill set people, extraordinary mindset people doing someone else's agenda. And if they say, oh, is it risky? The answer is no. There are enough examples starting to happen. Look at Freshdesk, 100 countries, they have sold it in less than 5 years. They've raised at $500 million value. It is about 10x thinking. And is it possible? The answer is yes. Is it risky? Yes. It is crazy? Yes, it is crazy. If you have an economic ability to survive for 3 years and you have confidence in you, I wish all of them come and take on the world. That's what my wish is. And that is possible, but we need to see these examples. Maybe the next gen who don't care about survival in the Maslow hierarchy. I say, we need people who say, let me come out, or be an entrepreneur in the company itself. Break some glasses. We are so safe. We don't, we kind of break every rules on the road, but when it comes to organization, company, talking to US guys, 12 p.m. midnight call, yeah, I'm there. Don't worry about it.
Spoken like...
After all, what can go wrong? Tell me. Will they fire all of us? No.
Excellent. So spoken like a person who experienced a traffic jam today on his way here. So thank you, Shekhar, for that. So when I got on a call when we were just talking about this panel, Sharad and I had some very interesting discussions where uniquely in his own style, he talked about how the parallel between this discussion around creating Silicon Valley, and he brought in, like all of us love to, Bollywood into the picture. So, I can't speak as well as you, Sharad, and I'd love to hear you paraphrase some of your thoughts for the audience.
We were complaining against the topic. We said, what kind of a topic is this, by the way? So, and then we were saying, okay, can we shake up the audience, because they're all, as Shekhar said, lulled into complacency. Then we were told, no, please don't do that. Lift them up instead. So this is the attempt to do that.
Folks, I'll accept your sympathies and handshakes. And
so this is, so think of it. I mean, this whole notion, there is a Hollywood, there is a Bollywood, right? I mean, both are producing movies. Bollywood is doing a good job. Hollywood, of course, is known around the world. They're not a replica of each other. And they will never become one. And they'll probably not even converge specifically in terms of what the structure of the industry is going to be, because the starting points were very different. So the point here is, like, look, our Bangalore ecosystem or India ecosystem is going to be like, like Bollywood. It is never going to be a replica of Hollywood. It should not be, because our starting point is completely different. And some of us actually, believe that, we actually talk about this, and many people have picked up on this, that, look, let Silicon Valley solve the problem for the first billion people. We have the power to solve the problem for the next 6 billion people. Because what the first billion people need, they understand very well. But what the next billion, the thele wala outside the hotel needs, is very difficult to understand. And can that problem be uniquely solved here in India? The answer for the first time is yes, because of the set of building blocks that are available. And I think as that begins to happen, that is something that would then be possible to take to other emerging markets as well. So I think there is a possibility of our Bollywood movies finding favor in other countries. I was in Egypt a few years back, and Turkey on a holiday, and everywhere I went, their concept of India was shaped by Bollywood movies. Our food has gone that way, so I think in future our companies will also exert soft power, but they would be built using a slightly different paradigm than what Silicon Valley has used so far.
Well, here's to looking forward to our companies exerting soft power, absolutely. Thank you, Sharad. I'm going to be a little mindful of the clock, and I know that this is a topic that we can talk about for a long time, and criticisms about having only this much time can be directed to Pari Natarajan sitting right here in the first row. But I'd like to just quickly, Alok and Girish, let's start with you, Alok. Any concluding thoughts, anything that you would like to say to tie things together?
I think in my view, going from MNC world to the startup world is a matter of emotional decision. You can never justify it by economics. You can never justify it by putting pros and cons and doing all of those kind of structural analysis.
You can't be rational.
You can't be rational. And you know what? I can tell you from my personal experience, when you leave MNC, you go and join a startup, or you are doing your own startup at much less money, much less cash flow. First day will hit you very, very hard, because you suddenly think today's earning was not as much as it was day before yesterday, but next day it's going to be fine, because your lifestyle doesn't get impacted that much. And it's a matter of that living that one day, first day, is what is more hard. And everything else after that is absolutely fine.
Yeah, I have a contrary opinion. I think, this is not like a job change. All of you have done a job change and it tends to settle down relatively quickly. This is a career change. And people who don't approach it from a career change perspective and they think it's actually going to be a slightly more difficult job change, they are always coming up a cropper. So my suggestion is that, actually do your homework right, because it is a career change. It is not easy. And especially if you've been in a cushioned environment, comfort-seeking environment for a long time, your brain and your muscles get atrophied. And so it is difficult. It is not easy. And I'm reminded of this recent breakfast that I had with somebody. I used to be in Yahoo, across the road, NetApp. So this person came to me. I want to do a startup. I want to start with, and good idea, actually a very good idea. He said, look, I will only start with $2 million seed funding. So I said, okay, I'll send him to Shekhar and Girish, and Alok, but how many such companies get funded in a year, which start off with a seed capital of $2 million? So he said, I don't know. I said, is it 40, is it 400 or 1200? And his first answer was 1200. How many of you agree with that? Okay. So I looked at him with a shock. He said, okay, but I thought for a while. He said, I'm very confident it is 400. How many of you think it is 400? Okay, this is a good audience. How many of you think it's 40? Yeah. So he started fighting with me. He said, Sharad, you don't know what is happening in the ecosystem. It couldn't be a 40. Right? So please it is not an easy move, but it's a necessary move. If you don't move, you are dead. Because there isn't going to be a career for you another 20 years from now. But we were told not to say this. So I will not dwell on this. Huh?
So just to be clear, right? Folks from PayPal sitting here, do not listen to. So Girish, any concluding thoughts?
Yeah, I don't want to give career advice, but I just wanted to say that when I left Wipro, I met John Doerr, who's a senior partner at Kleiner Perkins, and John Doerr personally invested in Google. So I went and met him, and he was showing me where he met the founders of Google and how he kind of decided to invest in them and so on. So, and this is 1999 is when John Doerr invested in Google. So thinking back, actually Kleiner Perkins was founded almost 35 years before. So all this evolution takes time. I mean, today we think that, startups must happen, they should immediately become Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley should come to India in an instant. It doesn't necessarily work like that. US took 40 years, 45 years to create Google. India will also take its own time. So idea is not to give up, and it will always go through cycles. But to have faith that with the talent pool that we have and the entrepreneurship that we have, we'll certainly succeed.
On that absolutely uplifting note, I'd like to throw it open to the audience for questions. So in the interest of making sure that this is done well, if you're asking a question, I'd urge you to please stand up so that we can place where you are in the audience. And secondly, please do identify yourself by name as well as your company's name. And if you want to ask it to a specific individual on the panel, by all means do so.
Okay, my name is Shweta and I'm from IBM, and this is a common question to all of you maybe. One of the dissimilarities I think that would differentiate the Indian journey from the Silicon Valley is probably the valuations. If you look at some of the valuations of the companies, the startups that are coming today, they're probably worth more than what Reliance is worth with all its oil fields and everything, right? So how do you think that's going to pan out? Is that really going to bring things down in a big rush, a balloon bursting, or how is it going to last out?
So I'll take a shot at
Sure,
this.
go ahead, Sharad.
I wrote about inflated valuation of e-commerce in June of last year in Economic Times. It's been my most controversial article. But having said that, I want to take a different tack at it. See, the problem with valuation is when the people inside the company start worrying about it. And when a startup starts worrying about its valuation, it takes the focus away from long-term value creation. And unfortunately, when this happens in a big company, it creates the same problem. Your own company, IBM, unfortunately, is an example of that, right? So don't please go for financial engineering. The problem is when you let the bean counters get important and the financial engineering becomes more important than actual value creation, only then is an issue. Otherwise, what is a valuation? It doesn't matter to an entrepreneur. What you are focused on is, are you creating value? Are you solving a problem? Can you do it at scale, as Shekhar was saying? Valuation is a byproduct of all of that. And you shouldn't get carried away by it one way or the other.
Hello? Hello? Yeah, I am Prashant. I am from HP Enterprise. And I, first of all, agree that, the current discussion from this panel was
Little
more...
closer. You'll have to hold him.
Yeah, hello?
Yeah.
So current, advice and discussions on this panel was more from individual perspective, in which I 100% agree. I just want to bring in the systemic aspect, because I believe that it is the system that makes people successful and helps people grow in their career and make the great things happen. So I mean, look around these things, like, in today's world, I mean, I came to Bangalore 20 years ago. Today, going to office is more challenging than the work in office. And we see around, the systems which we are building, like, metro is built without restrooms.
Little closer to your mouth.
Yeah, hello?
Yeah,
So,
much louder.
yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to bring in the systemic aspects. Like, look around, like, we are building the metro without a restroom on it. Then we are building 20 to 50-story buildings with a one-lane road put against it. So reaching to a main road is a problem. With all these systems which are so poorly designed and, placed, and traffic jams and this, and going to office is more challenging than working in the office itself, how can, this model be successful over the long run? Or are we end up going, looking up to the West to solve their problems and living in the things? Because I always see that the past looks better than present today.
Sure. I think we'll give this to
let
Shekhar.
me tackle that. So, it's very, very, it's very, very easy to comment. Even I used to be in that, camp for a while. Then I'm realizing that everything you said, I'm already seeing around $10 billion opportunity. It's question of our mindset. Actually, if everything is built well, you don't need Ola, you don't need Uber. Right? Why they are happening? Right? So every complaint we have, but what we don't like, that's where the key of entrepreneurship starts. And you solve it. And every day, since morning till now, I can already narrate around 10, 20 ideas. And people are starting with that. In fact, every one of us get the idea. The question is how many of us move to tackle it. And we are starting to see, like, look at we heard about the Aadhaar stack. Nobody has even thought about it. Digitally, we will move faster rather than the regular infra. You're hearing about it, very soon you will know more about the India stack. India stack is going to revolutionize how India financial banking will happen. How do you move money from your mobile phone to anybody else without going through and leapfrogging every technology worldwide? And how do you enable financial inclusion for billion-plus people? You will see these changes happening, and you're starting to see digitally we are moving way ahead of anybody else. And every one of these is the foundation that we are creating in the country, and it's being created not only by entrepreneurs, but also by think tanks like iSPIRT, where we are part of the members, as well as the government is already aware of it. But the challenge of what you're saying is beyond anybody can fix, until politically you go and fix via kind of new ideas.
I just want to add this very quick one. How many of you have used Wikipedia recently? Do you know the name of the person who wrote that page for you? Or he or she? No. Did that person do it for fame? Did that person do it for fortune? No. See, you've been corrupted, you've been spoiled, because you will not do anything until there's something coming back to you. That's the problem. And yet this India stack that he talked about has all been built by frustrated people who were volunteers, who've just given it back because they feel the system will get better. Bangalore actually is the best city for social commons. We have ugly Indians who are taking up portions of the city and improving it. We have Janagraha, which is doing it from a civic society perspective. We, as a city, have more happening here in Bangalore than any other place. The only thing is we must jump. It is easy to be a victim. It is difficult to be a doer. Don't be an entrepreneur, at least be a volunteer. Then if you do that, I think you will start feeling more at home in this place.
Well,